The portable generator hummed steadily in my garage, a sound I had grown to appreciate over the 3 years since my wife Emma's diagnosis. And I never imagined it would become the center of a neighborhood war that would expose just how far someone would go to get what they wanted. I'm Samuel Brennan, and I live in Pinewood Heights, a planned community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. It's one of those neighborhoods where every lawn looks immaculate. Every house sits at precisely the same distance from the street, and God help you if your mailbox isn't the approved shade of black. The Homeowners Association runs this place with an iron fist, led by a woman who made it her personal mission to make everyone's life miserable. That woman was Debra Patterson, 52 years old, with that distinctive blonde bob haircut that seemed mandatory for women who demand to speak to managers. She had been HOA president for 6 years, and in that time, she had fined nearly every household for something. My personal favorite was when she tried to fine the Johnsons for having a bird feeder that was 2 inches taller than regulations allowed. It was a Tuesday evening in late August when everything started. The weather forecast had been warning about severe thunderstorms all week, the kind that knock out power for days in our area. I had been preparing, making sure my generator had fresh fuel, checking all the connections. This wasn't paranoia. This was necessity. My wife Emma had been living with a rare neuromuscular condition called myasthenia gravis for 3 years. She needed a BiPAP machine at night to help her breathe, a feeding pump for her nutrition tube, and a suction machine for when her swallowing became compromised. Without power, these machines didn't work. Without these machines, Emma could die. Our generator was a heavy-duty Honda EU 7000 IS, one of those expensive inverter generators that ran quiet and provided clean power for sensitive medical equipment. It had cost me nearly $4,000 3 years ago, but it was worth every penny. I had it installed with a proper transfer switch by a licensed electrician, completely up to code. I even had the HOA Architectural Committee approve it, though that had been a battle in itself. Emma was in the living room that evening, reading a book while connected to her feeding pump. She looked up as I came in from the garage, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face thinner than it had been before the disease but still beautiful to me. "Storm's supposed to hit around midnight," I said, sitting down next to her on the couch. "I've got everything ready if we lose power." She smiled at me, that tired smile that had become familiar. "You always take such good care of me, Sam." I squeezed her hand gently. "That's what I'm here for." The storm hit earlier than expected, around 10:30. The wind picked up first, bending the trees in our backyard at severe angles. Then came the rain, sheets of it battering against our windows. Emma and I were getting ready for bed when the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. I heard the generator kick on almost immediately. The transfer switch worked perfectly, and within 15 seconds, our essential circuits were live again. The BiPAP machine hummed to life, the refrigerator containing Emma's medications restarted, and a few lights came back on. "Thank God for that generator," Emma said as I helped her get situated with her nighttime breathing machine. I kissed her forehead. "Sleep well. I'm going to check on a few things." I walked through the house, making sure everything was functioning properly. Through the windows, I could see the rest of the neighborhood was completely dark, except for a few houses that also had generators. The storm was still raging outside, lightning illuminating the street in brief, stark flashes. That's when I saw the lights come on at Debra Patterson's house across the street and 3 doors down. She had a generator too, though I knew it was a cheaper portable unit she had bought last year. I had seen it in her garage once during a community yard sale. It was one of those contractor-grade portable generators, loud and temperamental, but it worked for her needs. I went to bed, listening to the steady rhythm of Emma's BiPAP machine, a sound that had become as familiar as a heartbeat. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the power was still out. I got up early to check the fuel level in our generator and to assess any damage to the property. The neighborhood looked like a war zone. Tree branches everywhere, a few shingles missing from roofs and debris scattered across lawns. I was in my garage, checking the generator, when I heard raised voices outside. I stepped out to find Debra Patterson standing in my driveway, wearing designer athleisure wear and an expression of pure fury. "Samuel Brennan, I need to speak with you immediately," she announced in that imperious tone she always used. "Good morning, Debra. What can I do for you?" She gestured dramatically toward her house. "My generator quit working this morning, just stopped, and I can see yours running just fine." "I'm sorry to hear that. Have you checked the oil level? Those portable units sometimes have an automatic shutoff if the oil gets too low." Her face reddened. "I didn't come here for a mechanical lesson. I came to inform you that as HOA president, I'm invoking Emergency Protocol Section 7.3 of our bylaws." I had no idea what she was talking about, and my expression must have shown it. "In times of community emergency, essential resources must be shared equally among all residents," she continued, her voice rising. "I'm here to collect your generator until the power is restored or until my generator is repaired." I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "You want to take my generator? It's not a want, it's a requirement. The bylaws are very clear." "Debra, I'm not giving you my generator. My wife needs it for her medical equipment." She waved her hand dismissively. "I'm sure she can manage for a day or two. I have frozen food that's going to spoil. Do you know how much I spent on organic grass-fed beef last month? Besides, I have a very important Zoom call this afternoon with my book club." I felt my jaw tighten. My wife has a neuromuscular disease. She needs a BiPAP machine to breathe at night, a feeding pump and suction equipment. Without power, those don't work. I'm not giving you my generator. Debra's eyes narrowed. "I don't recall seeing any approval for medical equipment in your home." "That would require special permits and HOA notification. Emma's medical needs are none of the HOA's business, and my generator is legally installed with all proper permits from the county. You can't just demand it." "We'll see about that," she said, pulling out her phone. "I'm documenting this refusal to comply with HOA emergency protocols. You'll be receiving a formal notice and fine." She turned and marched back toward her house, her phone already to her ear, probably calling another board member to complain about me. I went back inside, my hands shaking with anger. Emma was at the kitchen table having breakfast through her feeding tube pump. "Was that Debra?" she asked. "Yeah, she wants to take our generator because hers broke down." Emma's eyes widened. "What? But I need it for my equipment." "I know. Don't worry, she's not getting it." But I was worried. I had lived in Pinewood Heights long enough to know that Debra Patterson didn't take no for an answer. She would find a way to make this difficult. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning up storm debris from our yard and checking in with some neighbors. The Thompsons next door were elderly and didn't have a generator, so I ran an extension cord over to their house so they could at least keep their refrigerator and a few lights running. They were grateful, offering to pay me for the fuel, but I refused. Around noon, a county utility truck came through the neighborhood. I flagged down the driver, a middle-aged man with a weathered face. "Any word on when power might be restored?" I asked. He consulted a clipboard. "This whole sector took major damage. Trees down on power lines, A transformer blew out on Highway 77. We're looking at probably 3 to 5 days minimum. My heart sank. 3 to 5 days without power meant I needed to carefully manage generator runtime and fuel. I had about 30 gallons stored in approved containers, which should be enough, but it would be tight. That afternoon, I received the email I had been expecting. It was from Debra, sent to the entire HOA mailing list. Dear Pinewood Heights residents, due to the ongoing power outage, the HOA board is implementing emergency resource sharing protocols. All residents with functioning generators are required to register them with the HOA and make them available on a rotating schedule to ensure fair access for all residents. Failure to comply will result in fines of $500 per day. Additionally, we are aware that some residents may have special circumstances, and these will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis by the board. Please respond within 24 hours with your generator information. Regards, Debra Patterson, HOA President. I read the email 3 times, my anger building with each pass. This was insane. You couldn't just demand people hand over their personal property, especially when it was powering life-sustaining medical equipment. I drafted a response email, trying to keep my tone professional despite my fury. Debra and board members, I am responding to inform you that my generator is dedicated to powering medical equipment necessary for my wife's health and safety. It was installed with proper county permits and approved by the Architectural Committee 3 years ago. It is not available for community sharing. I'm happy to run extension cords to elderly neighbors for essential needs, as I am currently doing for the Thompsons, but the generator itself cannot be moved or disconnected. Samuel Brennan. I hit send and waited. The response came within 15 minutes, but not by email. Debra was at my front door again, this time with 2 other board members, Richard Morrison and Patricia Hendricks. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Yes, Debra held up a printed copy of my email. This response is unacceptable. We need documentation of your wife's medical condition and proof that the generator is medically necessary. I felt my face flush with anger. You need what, Patricia? A thin woman in her late 40s spoke up in a syrupy, sweet voice. I'm sure you understand, Samuel. We can't just take your word for it. Anyone could claim medical necessity to avoid sharing community resources. My wife's medical information is protected by HOA. I don't have to prove anything to you. Richard, a stocky man with a red face, stepped forward. Look, Brennan, we're all in this together. Debra's freezer has a lot of food in it. That's important too. Not as important as my wife's ability to breathe, I shot back. This conversation is over. Get off my property. Debra's face twisted with rage. You're making a big mistake. The fine starts today. $500 per day until you comply. I slammed the door in their faces and immediately called my lawyer, Tom Chen. We had used him when buying the house and for Emma's medical power of attorney documents. He was a good attorney who didn't put up with nonsense. Tom listened to my explanation, asking a few clarifying questions. Send me the email and a copy of your HOA bylaws. I'll review them tonight and call you tomorrow morning. In the meantime, don't engage with them any further. Don't respond to emails, don't answer the door. Let me handle it. That night, as I was refueling the generator before bed, I noticed someone watching me from the street. It was Debra, standing in the darkness just beyond the reach of my motion sensor light. When she saw me looking, she didn't even have the decency to pretend she was doing something else. She just stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back toward her house. It gave me chills. There was something unhinged in that stare, something that suggested this had gone beyond HOA regulations and had become personal. The next morning, Tom called me at 8 o'clock. I reviewed everything. The emergency protocol they're citing doesn't exist. I read through your entire HOA bylaws document, all 83 pages. There's no section 7.3 about emergency resource sharing. She made it up. I felt vindicated but also more worried. So what do I do? I'm drafting a cease and desist letter right now. It'll be delivered to her this afternoon by courier. I'm also going to send copies to the other board members. Basically, it says they need to stop harassing you. They have no legal right to your property, and if they continue, you'll pursue legal action for harassment and potentially a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA. Yes. If they're targeting you because your wife has a disability and requires medical equipment, that's potentially an ADA violation. I doubt it would hold up in court since HOAs are a gray area, but the threat might make them back off. Thank you, Tom. One more thing, Sam. Document everything. Every interaction, every email, take photos, whatever. If this escalates, we'll need evidence. Tom's cease and desist letter was delivered at 3 o'clock that afternoon. I know because I heard Debra screaming at the courier from across the street. I watched from my window as she stood on her front lawn, shaking the letter at the poor delivery guy who was just trying to do his job. About an hour later, I received another email from Debra, sent only to me this time. Mr. Brennan, I have consulted with the HOA's legal counsel, and we are well within our rights to enforce community standards and resource sharing during emergencies. Your refusal to cooperate is noted. The fines will continue to accumulate. Additionally, the board will be reviewing your property for any other violations that may have been previously overlooked. We take our responsibility to the community very seriously. Debra Patterson. The threat was clear. Play ball or we'll make your life hell. I forwarded the email to Tom, who called me immediately. This is harassment, pure and simple. She's retaliating because you dared to stand up to her. I'm going to respond directly to her and CC the entire board. This needs to stop. But it didn't stop. Over the next 2 days, I received 3 violation notices. One claimed my mailbox was faded and needed repainting. Another said my trash cans were visible from the street outside of permitted hours, even though they were in my garage. The third claimed I had planted unauthorized flowers in my front bed. I took photos of everything. My mailbox was perfectly fine. My trash cans were inside. The unauthorized flowers were the same petunias that had been there for 2 years without complaint. Emma was getting stressed by all of this, which worried me more than anything Debra could do. Stress made her condition worse, and I had noticed her having more difficulty swallowing the past few days. On the 3rd day of the power outage, things took a darker turn. I was inside making lunch when I heard the generator sputter and die. I ran outside to find Debra standing next to it, a garden hose in her hand. She had sprayed water directly into the air intake. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, running toward her. She dropped the hose and backed away, but not before I saw the satisfied look on her face. "I was watering my plants and the hose slipped. Not my fault your generator can't handle a little water." I was shaking with rage. "You could have killed my wife. That generator powers her medical equipment." "Then maybe you should have shared it with the community when you were asked nicely," she said, her voice cold. I pulled out my phone and called 911. Debra's eyes widened. "Yes, I need police and possibly an ambulance at 1547 Magnolia Drive in Pinewood Heights," I said, keeping my eyes on Debra. "Someone just sabotaged my wife's medical equipment." Debra's face went pale. "You can't be serious. It was an accident." Was it? I turned my phone to show her. Because I have a security camera right there that caught the whole thing. I didn't actually have a camera yet, but I had been planning to install one. The bluff worked. Debra's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to genuine fear. The hose really did slip, she stammered, but her voice had lost its conviction. I went back inside to check on Emma while we waited for the police. She was okay. The machines had only been down for a few minutes, but she was frightened. What happened? She asked, her voice weak. Debra happened. But don't worry. This ends now. I got the generator dried out and restarted while Emma watched from the kitchen window. It took about 20 minutes, but thankfully the Honda was built tough. It coughed a few times, but eventually roared back to life. 2 police officers arrived about 15 minutes later, Officer Jennifer Martinez and Officer David Walsh. They were both professional and patient as I explained the situation, showing them the wet generator and pointing out Debra's garden hose still lying on the ground near my property line. Officer Martinez took notes while Officer Walsh went to speak with Debra. I could see them on her front lawn, Debra gesturing wildly, probably spinning some story about an innocent accident. "Mr. Brennan, can you walk me through what happened?" Officer Martinez asked. I explained everything, from the initial demand for my generator to the harassment and violation notices to finding Debra with the hose, spraying water into my generator. "And you said you have video surveillance." This was the moment of truth. "I'm planning to install cameras. I don't have footage of today, but I do have a Ring doorbell that caught her at my door the previous times." Officer Martinez nodded. "Can I see that footage?" I pulled it up on my phone, showing her the interactions from the past few days. Debra demanding the generator, Debra with the other board members demanding medical documentation, Debra standing in the street watching my house late at night. "That last one is concerning," Officer Martinez said. "Has she been stalking you?" "I don't know if I'd call it stalking, but she's definitely watching our house." Officer Walsh came back with Debra, who looked like she had been crying. Her eye makeup was smudged, and she kept dabbing at her face with a tissue. "Mrs. Patterson says it was an accident," Officer Walsh said. "She was watering her plants and lost control of the hose. The water pressure was higher than expected." "That's not what I saw," I said. "She was deliberately spraying water into the generator." "He's lying," Debra cried. "I would never endanger someone's life. He's just trying to get out of his HOA obligations." Officer Martinez looked between us. "Mr. Brennan, is your wife's medical equipment currently functioning?" "Yes, I got the generator restarted." "And Mrs. Patterson, do you have any witnesses who saw what happened?" Debra hesitated. "No, but I'm telling the truth. It was an accident." The officers exchanged glances. Officer Martinez spoke carefully. "Without video evidence or witnesses, this becomes a he said, she said situation. We can file a report, but I'm not sure what else can be done at this point." "What about the harassment?" I asked. "The constant violation notices, the demands for my property, showing up at my house repeatedly." "That sounds like a civil matter between you and your homeowners association," Officer Walsh said. "You'd need to handle that through your attorney or in civil court." I felt my frustration mounting. "So she can just sabotage my wife's medical equipment and walk away." Officer Martinez looked sympathetic. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Brennan. I'm going to file a detailed report of this incident. If anything else happens, call us immediately. And I'd strongly suggest getting those security cameras installed as soon as possible. If there's another incident and you have video evidence, that's a different story." After the police left, I called Tom and told him what happened. He was furious. "That's criminal mischief at minimum, possibly reckless endangerment. The problem is proving intent without video." The police said the same thing. Get cameras installed today if you can. In the meantime, I'm going to file a temporary restraining order against Debra Patterson. If she comes near your property again, she can be arrested. Will a judge grant that, given the pattern of harassment and today's incident? I think we have a good chance. That afternoon, I drove to a home security store and bought a complete camera system. 4 exterior cameras with night vision, motion detection, and cloud recording. I installed them myself over the next few hours, making sure every angle of my property was covered, especially the garage where the generator was located. Emma watched me work from the kitchen window. When I came back inside, she was crying softly. "Hey, what's wrong?" I asked, sitting next to her. "This is all my fault," she said. "If I wasn't sick, if you didn't need the generator for my equipment, none of this would be happening." I took her hand gently. "Emma, you listen to me. None of this is your fault. You didn't ask to get sick. And Debra Patterson is a bully who's used to getting her way. This would have happened eventually over something else. I just feel so helpless. You're fighting all these battles because of me. I'm fighting because I love you and because what she's doing is wrong. That's all there is to it." That night, I lay in bed listening to the BiPAP machine and thinking about everything that had happened. 3 days of power outage, 3 days of fighting with Debra, and according to the utility company, we still had at least 2 more days to go. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke up to the sound of the motion sensor alarm from my new camera system. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the app. The camera pointed at my garage showed a figure dressed in dark clothes approaching the generator. My heart racing, I jumped out of bed and ran for the garage. I hit the garage door opener as I ran through the kitchen, and the door started rising with its mechanical whine. The figure outside froze in the glare of the garage light, and I saw it was Debra Patterson, wearing black leggings and a dark hoodie, holding a screwdriver. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. She didn't run. Instead, she straightened up and glared at me with pure hatred. "You've destroyed everything. The restraining order, the emails from your lawyer to the entire board, the police report. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of monster. Because you are. You tried to sabotage my wife's medical equipment. I was just trying to make you share. Everyone else in this neighborhood follows the rules. Why should you be special? Because my wife could die without that generator. Is that so hard to understand?" I saw neighbors' lights starting to come on. The commotion had woken people up. "I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone. "Go ahead," Debra said, but her bravado was cracking. "I'm the HOA president. I was just inspecting your generator to ensure it meets community standards. At 2 in the morning, with a screwdriver, while violating a restraining order." The police arrived faster this time, probably because it was a violation of a restraining order. Officer Martinez was back, along with a different partner. "Mrs. Patterson," Officer Martinez said with a weary tone that suggested she had dealt with Debra before. "You were served with a restraining order this afternoon. You're not supposed to be within 50 feet of this property. I'm the HOA president. I have a right to inspect properties for violations. Not at 2 in the morning, not after being served with a restraining order. I'm going to have to place you under arrest." Debra's face crumbled. "You can't be serious. I'm a respected member of this community. I volunteer at the library. I organize the neighborhood watch." But Officer Martinez was already reciting her rights and placing her in handcuffs. The scene was surreal. Watching Debra Patterson, the tyrannical HOA president who had terrorized this neighborhood for 6 years, being led away in handcuffs while neighbors watched from their windows and doorways. Richard Morrison, the other board member, came rushing over in his bathrobe. "What's going on? Debra, what happened?" "She violated a restraining order," I explained. "I found her trying to tamper with my generator." Richard looked stunned. We didn't know she was doing any of this. The other board members, we thought she was just being thorough with HOA enforcement. She's been harassing us for days because I won't give her my generator. My wife needs it for medical equipment." Richard ran his hand through his hair. "Oh God, we had no idea about your wife's condition. Debra just told us you were refusing to cooperate with emergency protocols." "Emergency protocols she made up," I said. "There's no such thing in the HOA bylaws." "What?" Richard pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something, probably a digital copy of the bylaws. His face went pale. "She told us. She said it was Section 7.3. It doesn't exist." Richard looked like he might be sick. "I need to call an emergency board meeting. The other members need to know about this." The police took Debra away in the squad car, and the neighborhood slowly settled back down. I checked on Emma, who had slept through the whole thing thanks to her medication, and spent the rest of the night reviewing the camera footage and forwarding it to Tom. The next morning, Tom called with an update. "Debra Patterson has been charged with stalking, criminal mischief, violation of a restraining order, and they're considering adding attempted assault given that she was trying to disable medical equipment." "What happens now?" "She'll probably make bail this afternoon, but she'll have court-ordered conditions. She won't be able to contact you or come near your property. The criminal case will take months to work through the system, but in the meantime, you should have some peace." "What about the HOA fines she levied against me?" "I'm drafting a letter to the board demanding they be dropped. Given what's happened, I don't think they'll put up a fight. In fact, I'd suggest you might have grounds for a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment and targeting you based on disability." I thought about it. "I don't want to sue. I just want to live in peace and take care of my wife." "I understand. Let's see how the board responds first." That afternoon, Richard Morrison came to my door with Patricia Hendricks and the third board member, a man named Alan Foster, who I had rarely seen at any HOA meetings. "Mr. Brennan, can we speak with you?" Richard asked, his tone humble and apologetic. I let them in, offering coffee which they declined. They sat in my living room looking uncomfortable. "We owe you an enormous apology," Patricia began. "We had no idea what Debra was doing. She told us you were refusing to cooperate with emergency protocols and that you were being difficult. She never mentioned your wife's medical condition." Alan Foster spoke up. "I want you to know that the board is immediately dropping all fines against you. We're also removing Debra Patterson as president and from the board entirely. Her behavior was completely inappropriate and doesn't represent the values of this community. Furthermore," Richard added, "we're going to be reviewing all the violation notices issued in the past year. I suspect many of them were as frivolous as the ones sent to you." This has been a wake-up call for all of us. I appreciated their words, but I was still angry. "Did none of you think to question her, to check the bylaws when she claimed there were emergency protocols?" Patricia looked ashamed. "We should have. I trusted her because she had been president for so long. That was a mistake. My wife could have died," I said quietly. "When Debra sabotaged that generator, Emma's breathing equipment went down. She was okay because it was only for a few minutes, but what if I hadn't been able to restart it? What if it had been damaged beyond repair and I couldn't get a replacement for days?" The three of them sat in uncomfortable silence. "We're so sorry," Richard finally said. "Is there anything we can do to make this right? Just leave us alone. Let me take care of my wife without worrying about HOA harassment." "You have our word," Alan said. "And again, we're deeply sorry." After they left, I sat with Emma and told her everything that had happened. "It's really over?" she asked. "I think so." Debra's facing criminal charges, she's off the board, and the other board members seem genuinely apologetic. Emma squeezed my hand. "You protected me through all of this. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. That's what love is." The power came back on later that evening, 4 days after the storm. The lights flickered on throughout the house, and I heard a small cheer from the Thompsons next door. I shut down the generator properly, draining the fuel and doing the maintenance that would keep it ready for the next emergency. Over the next few weeks, things settled into a new normal. Debra Patterson's preliminary hearing was scheduled for November. Tom told me I would likely have to testify, and I was ready to do so. The new HOA board, with Richard Morrison as temporary president, was completely different from Debra's regime. They sent out an email apologizing to the entire community for the overzealous enforcement of the past few years, and announced they would be revising the bylaws to include better oversight and prevent future abuse of power. I received personal apologies from several neighbors who admitted they had been afraid to stand up to Debra. The Johnsons, the couple who had been fined for their bird feeder, told me they had actually taken it down rather than fight her. They put it back up the day after Debra was arrested. The community feeling in Pinewood Heights began to change. People were friendlier, more willing to bend rules that were silly to begin with. Someone painted their front door a non-approved color, and instead of a violation notice, Richard sent a polite email asking if they would consider repainting during the next maintenance cycle. The homeowner agreed, and that was the end of it. In October, I received a call from a prosecutor named Sarah Chen, no relation to my lawyer Tom. She wanted to meet with me to discuss the case against Debra Patterson. "I've reviewed all the evidence," she said when we met at a coffee shop in Charlotte. "The camera footage, the police reports, the emails, everything. We have a strong case, but I wanted to talk to you about something." "What's that?" "Mrs. Patterson's attorney has approached us about a plea deal. She would plead guilty to criminal mischief and stalking. In exchange, we dropped the more serious charges. She would get probation, mandatory community service, anger management counseling, and a permanent restraining order keeping her away from you and your wife." "What do you think I should do?" Sarah Chen stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "That's not my call. If we go to trial, we'll likely win and she might face jail time. But trials are stressful, especially for victims. You'd have to testify, relive all of this. Your wife might have to testify about her medical condition. Is that something you want to put her through?" I thought about Emma, about how stressed she had been during all of this, how her condition had worsened from the anxiety. If she takes the plea deal, she can never contact us again. Never. It will be a condition of her probation. If she violates it, she goes to jail immediately. Then I want her to take the deal. I don't want to put Emma through a trial. Sarah nodded. I think that's wise. I'll let her attorney know we're willing to proceed with the plea agreement. Debra Patterson's plea hearing was held on November 15th. I attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom with Tom. Debra looked different, smaller somehow, her usual confidence completely gone. She wore a conservative dress and barely spoke above a whisper as she admitted her guilt. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Rachel Morrison, accepted the plea but had some words for Debra. "Mrs. Patterson, what you did was reprehensible. You abused your position of authority in your community to harass and endanger someone whose only crime was refusing to give you his personal property. You targeted a disabled woman and her caregiver. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of bullying and abuse of power I've seen. The only reason you're not going to jail is because the victim in this case has shown you more mercy than you showed him. You will complete 200 hours of community service. You will attend anger management counseling for 1 year. You will have no contact with Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, period. If you violate any term of your probation, you will serve the maximum sentence of 18 months in prison. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Debra whispered. As I left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was finally over. The holidays that year were peaceful. The new HOA board organized a community potluck for Thanksgiving, and Emma and I actually attended. People were warm and welcoming, many apologizing for not standing up to Debra sooner. The Johnsons brought their famous apple pie. The Thompsons thanked me again for the extension cord during the power outage. Even Richard Morrison pulled me aside to tell me how much better the community felt now. "We should have stopped her years ago," he said, "but everyone was afraid. You were the first person to really stand up to her, and it made the rest of us realize we could too." "I didn't have a choice," I said. "Emma needed that generator." "Still, you did what was right even when it was hard. That matters." In December, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from a woman named Gloria Newman, who lived 2 streets over. "Dear Mr. Brennan," it read, "I heard about everything that happened with Debra Patterson. I wanted you to know that your courage inspired me. My husband Gary has Parkinson's disease, and we've been hiding it from the HOA because we were afraid they would make things difficult for us. After seeing you stand up for your wife, we decided to stop hiding. I wanted to thank you for showing us that it's okay to advocate for our needs. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Sincerely, Gloria Newman." I showed the letter to Emma and she had tears in her eyes. "You did something good, Sam. You changed things." "We changed things," I corrected. "This was about both of us." As the year came to a close, I reflected on everything that had happened. It had started with a simple refusal to give up a generator, but it had become about so much more. It was about standing up to bullies, about protecting the people we love, about communities working together instead of against each other. The generator sat in my garage, quiet now that the power was stable. But I kept it maintained, ready for the next emergency. It had become more than just a piece of equipment. It was a symbol of everything I was willing to do to protect Emma. In January, the HOA board officially revised the bylaws. They added clear language about disability accommodations, limited the president's unilateral power, created an appeals process for violation notices, and explicitly stated that HOAs could not demand personal property from residents under any circumstances. Richard Morrison sent the updated bylaws to every household with a personal note. We learned a hard lesson about what happens when we give too much power to one person and don't question their authority. These changes ensure it won't happen again. The following spring, Emma's condition stabilized. Her neurologist adjusted her medications, and she started physical therapy. She still needed her medical equipment, still needed the BiPAP at night and the feeding pump, but she had more good days than bad. We started taking evening walks around the neighborhood, slow walks where I pushed her wheelchair when she got tired. People would stop to chat, ask how she was doing, share stories about their own families. The community that had once felt hostile now felt like home. One evening in May, we were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset when Emma turned to me. "Do you ever regret buying this house? After everything that happened with Debra?" I thought about it for a moment. "No. Because if we hadn't been here, if that situation hadn't happened, maybe Debra would have kept terrorizing people. Maybe Gloria Newman would still be hiding her husband's condition. Maybe the HOA would have continued to be a source of fear instead of community." "Something good came out of something bad," Emma smiled. "You always find the silver lining. I learned that from you." That night, I did my routine check of the generator. It started on the first pull, running smoothly and reliably. I let it run for a few minutes, then shut it down and went back inside where Emma was watching television. The generator hummed steadily when I tested it again the following month, and I never took for granted what it represented. It was more than just backup power. It was security, safety, and the knowledge that I could protect the person I loved most. Years later, I would tell this story to friends, usually when they complained about their own HOA issues. Some would be shocked that it escalated so far. Others would nod knowingly, having dealt with their own power-hungry board members. But the lesson was always the same. Stand up for what's right, protect the people you love, and don't let bullies win just because they have a title. Debra Patterson completed her probation without incident. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to a condo in South Carolina, somewhere without an HOA. I hoped she learned something from the experience, but I didn't waste much energy thinking about her. The restraining order remained in place, a permanent legal barrier between us. I was fine with that. Richard Morrison served as HOA president for 2 years before passing the role to Alan Foster. Both were fair, reasonable, and actually improved the community. They organized neighborhood events, mediated disputes before they became problems, and treated residents like neighbors instead of subjects. The violation notices that had been Debra's weapon of choice became rare. When they were issued, they were for legitimate problems and came with offers of assistance rather than threats of fines. The change in culture was remarkable. Emma continued to have good days and bad days, as is the nature of chronic illness. But knowing that our community supported us rather than threatened us made the hard days easier. When she had to be hospitalized for a week due to a breathing crisis, neighbors brought meals and checked on our house. The new board even sent flowers. That's what a community should be. The generator continued to sit in my garage, a silent guardian waiting for the next emergency. When Hurricane Helene hit the Carolinas in September of the following year, it was ready. The power went out for 6 days that time, and once again, my generator kept Emma's equipment running without interruption. But this time, I also helped power equipment for 3 other neighbors with medical needs, including Gloria Newman's husband Gary. I ran heavy-duty extension cords to their houses, and we formed a little network of people helping people. That's what that generator had always been about. Not hoarding resources, as Debra had accused, but ensuring that vulnerable people were protected. And when it was safe and possible, sharing that protection with others. The irony wasn't lost on me. Debra had accused me of not sharing, but she was the one who wanted to take resources away from someone who needed them for something she merely wanted. When I actually could share without compromising Emma's care, I did so gladly. On the 5-year anniversary of the storm that started everything, Emma and I had a quiet dinner at home. The power was on, the weather was calm, and life was peaceful. You ever think about that week? Emma asked over pasta, when everything happened with Debra. Sometimes, I admitted. Mostly I think about how lucky we are, lucky that the generator worked, lucky that we could afford it, lucky that the new board turned out to be reasonable. Lucky that I have you, Emma added. That goes both ways. We finished our dinner and went out to the back porch to watch the stars. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, exactly what suburban life should be. My phone buzzed with an email from the HOA. It was the monthly newsletter, full of upcoming events and community announcements. There was a note thanking everyone who had helped during the recent power outage, specifically mentioning the neighbors who had shared generator power with those who had medical needs. It felt good to be recognized for doing the right thing rather than punished for it. As I sat there with Emma, listening to the crickets and watching the fireflies, I thought about how different things could have been. If I had given in to Debra's demands, if I had let her bully me into submission, Emma might not be here. The generator that saved her life would have been powering Debra's refrigerator full of organic beef. The thought made me angry all over again, but I let it go. Debra Patterson was gone from our lives. She had faced consequences for her actions. Justice had been served, and we had won not just the legal battle, but the fight for our right to live safely in our own home. The generator in the garage was still running perfectly when I checked it that night, a quiet reminder of everything we had been through and everything we had overcome. It would be there tomorrow and the day after and every day after that, ready to power Emma's equipment, ready to keep her safe. That was all that mattered. The neighborhood continued to thrive under new leadership, becoming the kind of community where people actually wanted to live rather than felt trapped by tyrannical rules. The changes that started with one man refusing to give up a generator rippled outward, transforming Pinewood Heights into a place of actual community rather than enforced conformity. And every time I heard that generator's reliable hum during a power outage, I remembered what it represented. Love, protection, standing up for what's right, and the simple truth that some things are worth fighting for, no matter what anyone else says. Emma was worth fighting for. She always would be. That generator would keep running, and I would keep fighting, for as long as she needed me. And that was the end of our HOA war, the story of how a generator became the battlefield, and how standing up to a bully changed an entire community. It wasn't the story I expected to tell when we moved to Pinewood Heights, but it was the story that needed to be told, because sometimes the smallest acts of defiance lead to the biggest changes. And sometimes, protecting one person ends up protecting everyone.